Have you ever dreamed of decking your space out in the iconic Mackenzie-Childs style, but you cringed at the price tag? Well, what if I could show you how to create some beautiful Mackenzie-Childs decor for a fraction of the cost? Well, today we are going to be creating some high-end Mackenzie-Childs dupes. We're gonna start off with a decor piece that I have never done before, and it is this terrarium. This Keuka, or Keuka, however you want to say it, terrarium is simply gorgeous. It has such a unique look. The base has some stunning black and white detail. It's a great size, but it is not a great price. This terrarium costs $199.95. That's far too much for me to pay, and I know we can get a similar look for much, much less. So the first thing that we need is a terrarium. Now, in the past, I have seen a whole bunch of lanterns at Hobby Lobby. So I thought I'm gonna try my luck there, and I found a terrarium that was so similar to our inspiration piece. It has the same metal lines on the top, the shape is rectangular, and it's got the pretty glass panes, just like our inspiration piece. And it was only $11.99, which is a fabulous price. And if you wanted to, you could even wait until all the lanterns were on sale and you could get it for even cheaper. Now, the only negative about this terrarium is the color. Right now it's this sage green, which I actually love. So if you wanted to do this dupe in that same color of that sage green, you could definitely do it. But because we are trying to get an identical look for less, we are going to paint ours. But before we do that, we need to remove the panes of glass from our terrarium. We do not want those on there. We can easily slip those out. It's a lot easier to remove the glass as opposed to trying to tape it off with some blue painter's tape. So our terrarium is prepped and ready to paint. But before we do that, we need a base. On our inspiration terrarium, you can see that it is raised up and the base that it's on has some gorgeous detail on it. So in order to get that same look, we need to find a base. Well, while I was at Hobby Lobby, I headed over to the wood aisle. I found a wood box sign. This rectangular box sign was the exact dimension of the bottom of our terrarium. We got so lucky. It's large enough that we're going to be able to add pretty details on it, and it was only $6.49. It does have a metal wall hanger on the back, so we need to remove that. So I simply just got out my screwdriver and I unscrewed both of the screws and pulled off the hanger. Now I can take my terrarium and my wood sign outside, and we're going to spray it in some black semi-gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I'm using a semi-gloss because I want a little bit of sheen to my terrarium and the base. I made sure that the wood sign box and the terrarium were completely covered in the spray paint, and then I let them dry for 1 hour. I came back, flipped over the wood sign and the terrarium, and began to paint the opposite side. Once the terrarium and the wood were completely saturated in the black spray paint, I let them both dry for an additional hour. Now it's time to create that iconic black and white check on the top and the bottom of our base. So what I did was, when I was at Hobby Lobby, I thought I'm gonna head over to the scrapbook section and see what I can find. What they had was a piece of scrapbook paper that was black and white striped. This paper is going to be perfect, and it was only 79 cents, which is a great price. So what I'm going to do is take my scrapbook paper, I'm going to put it over my self-healing mat. I got out my rotary cutter. I'm cutting this paper into 1/4 inch because the base is thin. I don't want these strips to be too thick. A 1/4 inch is absolutely perfect. I'm going to attach these strips to the wood base with some Mod Podge. I'm painting it on with a very thin paintbrush because we want the Mod Podge to just be right where we want to put the paper. We don't want to cover up that entire base in the Mod Podge, so I'm painting it on at the top in a very thin line. Then I took my scrapbook paper and I pressed it into the Mod Podge. There is some overhang on either side, and we'll deal with that in just a bit, but once the upper line was Mod Podged in place, I repeated the process on the bottom. I painted on the Mod Podge with the paintbrush and then pressed the scrapbook paper into the Mod Podge. Next, we're going to do the sides, and this is where I just bent the overhang of the strips and Mod Podge that in place. And then I got a couple more strips of the black and white paper and I cut them to the correct size so it would fit perfectly in those spaces. And now I have that iconic black and white check design on the top and bottom of my wood base. The center design on the base was definitely giving me a headache. I thought, I'm gonna easily be able to find either some scrapbook paper or some ribbon that will mimic this design, and I came up with nothing that was anywhere close to this design. So I decided I'm going to have to make this myself. So I headed over to my Cricut design space and I had my Cricut Maker cut out a very similar design on some white removable vinyl. I weeded away the excess vinyl from around my design. I took a segment of transfer tape. I put that over the top of the vinyl design, and then removed the backing from the vinyl. At this point, I cut the design into individual strips and then placed the vinyl design between the black and white stripes on my wood box. It fit in there perfectly, and I still have a teeny bit of space above and below the design that's going to be perfect for what we're going to do later on. I repeated this process around the entire perimeter of the box. This design is a fantastic solution. It gives us a very similar design to the inspiration piece, but it is a very unique look. If you look really closely at the base of the Mackenzie-Childs terrarium, you can see that there is a gold line above and below the center design. So we are going to do that exact same thing. I'm going to be using a Dollar Tree gold paint pen. This is going to work perfectly. So I've got my paint pen and then I also got a ruler. I placed the ruler right above the vinyl design and then I drew a line above the vinyl right below the black and white check. This paint pen worked out so nicely. It gave me the perfect size line. The gold is a great contrast in color to the black and the white. I did trace over the line a few times if I felt like it needed to be a little more saturated. I drew the line above the vinyl design and below, just like our inspiration piece. And now we're done creating our base for our terrarium. You guys, look at how fantastic this looks. This is going to be such a beautiful addition to our terrarium, and it looks so similar to the Mackenzie-Childs base on their terrarium. So now that our base is completed, all we need to do is get our terrarium and put the glass back inside. The glass slid in like a puzzle piece, and then I placed my terrarium on top of the wood base. I am not permanently attaching these two pieces together, just in case I want to use the terrarium in a different way later on. But if you did want to attach your pieces together, E6000 will do the job beautifully. It will make sure that those pieces never come apart. And that's it. Look at this, you guys. I love this terrarium. I am so happy with the way that it turned out. It definitely looks like the Mackenzie-Childs terrarium that inspired us in the first place. The base is such a gorgeous detail. It is unique and so similar to our inspiration piece. The terrarium itself is the same size, and it also has those same gorgeous lines and the triangular top. But that's where the similarities stop. Let's look back at our inspiration piece and remember how much it cost. It was $199.95, which is so much money. And after calculating all the costs that went into creating my terrarium, the grand total was $24.27. What a fantastic deal, which means we saved over $175. And check out how similar our terrarium looks to the inspiration piece. We were able to get a fabulous look for less, and we were able to save a chunk of change in the process. It's that time of year where we're heading out to parties, we're seeing friends and family, and we want to look our very best. So I'm so excited today to be partnering with City Beauty to talk about their amazing City Beauty Lip Plumping Gloss. And as someone that is always on the go, I was thrilled to try this out because it helps my thin, dry lips with powerful natural ingredients that fit right into my simple routine. And it comes in so many fantastic colors. I don't have anything on my lips right now, but I have been dying to try this San Diego lip gloss. Look at how pretty that is. That shade of pink is gorgeous. And what I love about it is that it looks all natural. And it definitely keeps my lips moisturized, which is perfect, especially during those dry winter months. And what really drew me in is how City Beauty's formulas are science-backed. It's cruelty-free, paraben-free, and packed with high-performing actives. It just glides right on, and look at that shine. Ooh, I just love this stuff. It's so good. Another thing that I love is that it is not complicated. There's not a 10-step routine. All you need to do is just swipe it on. City Beauty empowers women at any age to feel radiant and confident, celebrating our natural beauty. I have been loving these results. My lips feel nourished all day. I will leave a link to City Beauty in my description box, and I also have a coupon code for you. It's Lisa Burningham, and that will get you 20% off your order, which is a great deal. They also have a whole bunch of other amazing beauty products on their website. I know you will love them. You guys know that I love pillows, pillow coverings, and birds. So when I saw this bird watcher's pillow, I knew I had to recreate it. I loved the birds on this, and the color tone is fantastic. It's got those reds and pinks and greens. It's just going to be so perfect for these upcoming summer months. Now, what's not perfect is the price of this pillow. You guys, for a singular pillow, it's $129.95. So that's gonna be a hard pass for me, especially knowing that I can create one for so much less. Now, do you guys remember last week when we embellished our runner? This is a huge runner. It's a 13 by 17, and we added some beautiful 3D flowers to it. This runner was from Amazon haul, and in that video I told you that I had purchased a few things from the Amazon haul website. Well, we got some pillow coverings from the Amazon haul website. This set of two 20 by 20 size pillow coverings was only $5.99. That is such a deal. These are a huge size. They are thick, which is great. They actually remind me of the pillow coverings that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. I like to get them there, and then I also like to buy them at IKEA, but I think I found my new favorite place to get pillow coverings because of the price. These are identical, and they are so much less. So we are definitely going to take advantage of these two pillow coverings today, and we're gonna make two bird pillows. So now that we've got our pillow coverings, we need to find some fabric or some kind of design to go over the top. So I thought, oh, this is gonna be so easy. I'm just gonna go over to Hobby Lobby and rummage through their fabric section. I'm going to be able to find some bird fabric. Well, no such luck. So now I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? Well, there's some other stores close by, and one of those is Belle's. I was back in the kitchen section looking for something else, and I stumbled across a runner. It just jumped out at me. It has those same beautiful birds, the same leaves and flowers. It has that pink and green color tone, and it's even better than fabric because it's got these 3D flowers on it made out of yarn, and the feathers on the birds have some material on it, and then there's some gold threading. It looks very expensive, so I knew it would be perfect for our pillow. This is quite a long runner, so I'll have plenty of fabric, and it was only $16.99. What I'm gonna do is cut the runner into a 14 by 14 inch square so that we can put it directly in the center of our pillow covering. I measured out the size with a ruler and a pencil, and then I got fabric scissors and I cut along the line. To create matching pillows, I carefully cut 2 fabric squares from the runner, ensuring each piece features the same repeating pattern for a cohesive look. Now there are 2 layers to the back that we have to remove because we don't want to put this on the center of our pillow and have it kind of bubble up. We want it to be able to lay flat. So I got my seam ripper and I carefully removed the back layers of fabric. I'm going very slow because I don't want to accidentally puncture the front pattern fabric. I removed the back 2 layers of fabric. Once I had removed the back layers on the first square, I did the exact same thing on the second square, and now I have 2 1-layer squares of fabric. Now that the sides are unpicked, I actually have a 1/2 inch seam allowance on either side, and we don't want it because it's going to throw off the dimensions of our square, but also wavy on one side, and the other side, the pattern didn't actually even end up going all the way to the edge. So we've got to cut that off. So I just got my ruler out and my rotary cutter, and I trimmed off that extra 1/2 inch on either side of my squares. If you like DIY home decor, dupes like this, thrift flips, room transformation, or interior design ideas, then you have come to the right place. I post new weekly videos on all things related to the home, so make sure you're subscribed so you can get your weekly dose of home decor inspiration. Now there are a few ways that you can attach the fabric square to the pillow covering. The traditional way is just to sew it on, but you can also use some fabric glue. But what we're going to use today is this heat and bond iron-on adhesive. I love this stuff. I use it all the time. I buy it at Hobby Lobby, and a package which includes 1 yard of this heat and bond is only $2.99, which is a fabulous price. Now there are 2 sides to this heat and bond. There is the bumpy textured side, and then there's the paper side. So what we're going to do is place the bumpy side up, and then I'm going to take my fabric and place it over the top. My iron is set at a medium-high heat. I placed it over the top of the fabric. I left it in place for 2 to 3 seconds and slowly moved it along the surface of the fabric. You want to make sure that the entire square is sufficiently heated up. The heat from the iron melts the adhesive underneath, which bonds the fabric to the adhesive. Once I have the entire surface heated up appropriately, I can now cut the fabric into whatever shape I want. I'm obviously cutting mine into a square, but you could do a heart, a circle, whatever shape you want. And because it's bonded to the adhesive, the fabric is not going to fray. So I just trimmed around the square, and then I repeated the process with the second fabric square. I made sure that the bumpy side of the heat and bond was facing up. I placed the fabric over the top. I heated it up with the iron for 2 to 3 seconds, which fuses the fabric and the adhesive together, and then I cut out my desired shape. Now my 2 squares are ready to be adhered to my pillow covering. Now we're going to be removing the paper on the back. So I just peeled that away, and then I carefully placed my fabric in the center of the pillow covering. I got out my ruler to make sure it was positioned directly in the center. Then I took my iron and placed it over the top of the fabric. This time I'm leaving the iron in place for a little longer, about 8 seconds. I slowly moved the iron around the surface of the fabric and made sure that every inch of the fabric had been heated up appropriately. This fabric adhesive is so strong that in no time you'll have a piece of fabric that is 100% fused in place. Now we're going to just repeat that process on our second square. I removed the paper backing, placed it in the center, placed my iron over the top, slowly moved it across the entire surface of the fabric until everything was heated up appropriately. This process did not take long at all. In no time you'll be finished and your fabric will be bonded together. If you look really closely at the inspiration pillow, you can see that there is a green outline along the edge of the pillow covering. Well, we want to do that same thing, especially because we actually have a lot more excess pillow covering that you can see because our fabric was only so wide. So we definitely need to add some green ribbon to highlight that and to also cover up the edges because we don't want to see where the fabric stops and the pillow covering begins. So what I'm going to do is use some velvet ribbon. Look at how pretty this green tone is on this ribbon. This was actually from Hobby Lobby and I purchased it in the fall time. You can see it says fall ribbon right there. And I just had a spool left over, thankfully, from decorating this fall. This beautiful sage colored ribbon was 40% off when I bought it months and months ago. I want the edges where my two ribbons meet to be cut at a 45-degree angle. I think that a 90-degree angle is just a little too blunt, but I think a 45-degree angle looks so much more custom. It's a little tricky to get a precise 45-degree angle when you're having two items meet. So let me show you how I do it. What I'm gonna do is I'm just going to cross the two ribbons together like that. And then I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm just going to cut diagonally where those two pieces of ribbon overlap. This technique will give me the perfect 45-degree angle. So I just repeated this technique with all of my ribbon segments. Now that all of my ribbons are cut, we are going to fuse them to the pillow using that heat and bond once again. So I just lined up my ribbon like little soldiers on the bumpy side of the heat and bond, and then I took my iron and I placed it over the top of the ribbon. I left it there for 2 seconds, which fused the ribbon to the adhesive. Next, I cut out my strips individually. Then I removed the paper from the back of the ribbons and placed them on our pillow covering. I took my iron and I put it over the top. I made sure that the iron stayed in place for at least 8 seconds, which will fuse that ribbon to the pillow covering. Once I was finished adding the ribbon to my first pillow, I repeated the process on my second pillow. Adding this green ribbon finishes the edges so nicely. They're clean, sharp, and the velvet ribbon is an elegant textural contrast. Now that the ribbon is in place, I stood back and I looked at my beautiful pillow coverings, but there was something that jumped out at me that I did not like. There's like a black blob on the fabric. I don't know if it's supposed to be a leaf or a rock. I'm not sure what it is, but what it does is that it stands out and it draws your eye to it. So instead of looking at all the other beautiful birds and flowers, I'm looking directly at a black shape. I don't want to see that. So I'm going to cover it up with some 3D flowers. We used these flowers last week. We did some free and cheap decor, and one of the items we transformed was a tin canister. And I added some beautiful 3D lace and pearl flowers to this canister. I purchased them at Hobby Lobby in the wedding section, and so I had plenty of these left over. What I'm going to do is get my fabric glue and I'm going to add it to the back of these flowers. And I'm going to place some in strategic spots on the pillow covering. So goodbye to that black blob. And now we're going to add a couple more scattered throughout the surface of our pillow. That way it looks cohesive. There are some stickers on the back of these flowers, so just peel those away and then add the fabric glue to the back. Once all of my flowers were in place, I let the glue dry for 3 hours. While that glue is drying, I noticed that I still had a pretty big chunk of that runner left over, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I just glue the edges together and then I can have a smaller runner? So that's what I did. I just took my fabric glue and I added the fabric glue to the edges that had been cut and I pressed them together. You could, of course, sew this together or even use some heat and bond, but because the fabric glue was already open, I'm just going to use that. And the runner did have that giant black spot on it, so we've got to cover that up. So I added a couple more of those 3D flowers to my mini runner, and once those were in place, I let the glue dry for 3 hours. And look at this. Now I have a pretty mini runner that I can use in various areas in my house. You don't always need a giant runner. Sometimes a small runner is a perfect solution. So not only were we able to embellish 2 pillow coverings out of this singular runner, but we were able to still have enough left over to make a small runner. So yay for us. So now that the glue is dried on our pillows, all we need to do is fill them with a down pillow insert. I love using down pillow inserts because you can mold them and shape them. And that's it, you guys. Look at our beautiful pillow coverings. I'm not gonna lie, I actually like mine better than the Mackenzie-Childs pillow coverings. The flowers and the birds and the leaves on this fabric, in my opinion, is so much prettier, especially because of the 3D details on it. The additional raised threading and the 3D fabric on the birds and the flowers looks so high end. And I love that we were able to add those additional 3D flowers, not only to cover up our black blob, but it just adds another designer element to our pillow covering. And let's talk about the ribbon around it. That definitely elevates it because it's this elegant velvet. It looks luxurious and it's a great color contrast, but it also ties in all the other green that we have on the fabric. Let's take a look back at our Mackenzie-Childs pillow coverings. If I were to purchase 2 of those, it would cost me $259.90. Oh, we don't want to do that. But after calculating all the costs that went into creating my 2 pillow coverings, the grand total was $32.07. So we were able to save over $230 creating our very own pillow coverings. And like I said before, I actually like mine better. I'm going to place these on my chairs here in the family room. These are some of my favorite pillow coverings that I've ever done. I love the color scheme. The 3D fabric is unique and special. I love the velvet trim around the fabric and the lace and pearl 3D flowers. They're going to be an elegant and classic pillow for the summertime. Decorative plates are some of my favorite accessories to decorate with because they are so versatile. So when I came across this English garden serving platter from the Mackenzie-Childs website, I knew I wanted to recreate it. The emerald green color tone on the flowers is so pretty. It's very vibrant yet classy, and the gold rim is a beautiful accent. Are there any guesses on how much you would have to pay to purchase one of these serving platters? Well, if you guessed $99.95, you would be correct because that's how much this serving platter costs. Now, I know that I can recreate this for a fraction of the price. Now, what I'm going to use is a charger. I've used these clear chargers with the gold rim around it before in other projects. I purchased them at Hobby Lobby and they're only $1.99 a piece. The reason why I'm using this charger is because it is larger than a plate, so it goes along with the dimensions from the server from the Mackenzie-Childs website. So this is going to be a perfect base to start with. Now the next thing I'm going to need is some flowers in that green tone. While I was getting the charger in the kitchen and dishes section at Hobby Lobby, I just happened to stumble across the most perfect set of napkins that is an almost identical match to the inspiration piece. It has a similar green tone and a beautiful floral pattern. And happy day, we get a bonus napkin for the low price of $3.49. So we definitely scored. And guess what else they have at Hobby Lobby? They have some dishwasher safe Mod Podge. I've been wanting to use this for a very long time. Today is our day, you guys. We're gonna test this out and see how good it works. So now I've got all the pieces that I need to create our serving platter. So what I'm gonna do is take my charger, I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to take my napkin, I'm going to place it over the top. Then I got a pencil and I traced an oversized circle around my charger. I'm tracing out an oversized circle because I don't know how much fabric we're going to need because the charger is domed. I'd rather have an oversized circle than a circle that's too short because then we're gonna have to start over again, which means we're gonna have to go back to Hobby Lobby and I don't want to do it. So we're just taking extra precautions to make sure that we don't have to do that. So now that our circle is cut out, what I'm going to do is get my dishwasher safe Mod Podge and a sponge brush, and I'm going to begin to paint that over the underside of our charger. This dishwasher safe Mod Podge is thicker than regular Mod Podge, and it also has a bit of an odor. It's not super strong, but you can smell it. So just know that those are the two things that are different than regular Mod Podge. Once the underside of the charger had been covered in the Mod Podge, I took my fabric napkin, I placed it over the top, I pressed it firmly to the charger, I got out any air bubbles that may have been trapped underneath the fabric. Once my napkin was in place, I painted on a top layer of Mod Podge. You want to make sure that the surface of the fabric is coated in the Mod Podge. The fabric will suck up the Mod Podge, so you're going to want to make sure that you add a decent amount. Be generous with the Mod Podge. Once the top coat had been painted on, I let it dry for 3 hours. Now that it's dry, you can see that the fabric is much stiffer. So now I can take my fabric scissors and trim off that excess fabric from around the charger. The charger is a template, so I just ran my scissors along the edge of the plate and trimmed off all the fabric, and now I have a perfect fit. According to the bottle, you now have to wait for 28 days to let the Mod Podge fully cure. So this is not an overnight solution. You're definitely going to have to do this a month in advance. So if you've got a party coming up and you want to make some one-of-a-kind dishes that people actually use and you can wash them afterwards, you're going to have to prepare now. But while we're waiting for the 28 days, I can definitely display my charger in a cabinet. I can place it on top of a frame holder, and it will be a beautiful decorative accessory. I mean, you guys, look at this. Who would not want to display this in their home? I cannot believe how gorgeous this napkin looks on the back of this charger. I went with a clear charger because I wanted to be able to have a smooth surface. So by putting the fabric on the back, we still get the design of the fabric, but we get a smooth surface as well. The size is very comparable to the Inspiration serving platter. The floral design is almost identical. We have the same gold rim, but what we do not have is the same price. If you remember, the English serving platter from the Mackenzie-Childs website was $99.95. After calculating all the costs that went into creating our gorgeous decorative plate, the grand total was $7.48. That is a fantastic deal. That means that we saved almost $90 creating one ourselves. And I think that ours is equally as gorgeous. What a great dupe and what a great savings. We definitely got an affordable look-alike. So not only am I able to use this plate to serve food on because we've got the dishwasher safe Mod Podge on it, but I can definitely use it as a decorative piece to display throughout my home. I could just pop it on top of a frame holder and we have a stunning piece of affordable decor. Look for less is this Mackenzie-Childs Rosy Check Trophy Topiary. Just look at how beautiful this topiary is. I love the size, I love the color, and I love the detail on it. Do you guys want to take a gander at how much this beautiful topiary is? It is $999.95. That is way too expensive for me, no matter how much I like it. So we are going to get the look for so much less. Now, I've actually had this topiary on my mind for quite a while now, so I've been looking for alternatives as I've been out shopping, and I found a solution at the Dollar Tree. I have a Dollar Tree that's got the $5 section, and on these shelves were some stacking eggs. The light bulb went on and I knew that they would be perfect. You can get 2 color tones of these stacking eggs. You can get the white one, which is what I got, but you can also get some pastel eggs. These eggs are very large and I love the raised diamond detail on them. The texture is going to work out beautifully in our design. I purchased 2 of these stacking eggs because we're going to be creating 2 topiaries. So for the cost of both of these, it was only $10. So we are off to a great start. Now we are going to start decorating the bottom egg first. Now in our inspiration piece, you can see that it's got this basket weave stripe design in this beautiful pink tone. Well, we are going to do something similar, but I am not going to paint it on. What I'm going to do is use some ribbon. If this ribbon looks familiar, it's because I used it last week. We created a custom ribbon and I used this beautiful pink velvet ribbon in that. I purchased this ribbon at Michael's. It's the perfect width and color for our topiary. So what I'm going to do is hot glue the end of this ribbon to the top of the egg. Then I'm going to run a line of hot glue diagonally down the egg. Because of the diamond design on these eggs, it almost acts as like graph paper. So we've got a grid and we know exactly where to glue the ribbon on. Thanks to this, I'm able to keep my lines straight and spaced out evenly. So hooray for the fact that I don't have to measure anything out. I just have to follow that raised pattern lengthwise down the egg. I spaced it out so 2 diamonds were between each of the rows of ribbon. I added these ribbon lines down the entire circumference of the egg. Because we are creating a basket weave design, I need my ribbon to now go in the opposite direction. So I just simply repeated that same process. I just hot glued the ribbon to the top of the egg and ran a line of hot glue diagonally down the egg. Again, I'm just spreading the ribbon out 2 squares apart from each other. And at the end of the ribbon, I cut it and I hot glued the ribbon to the bottom of the egg. That way it stays secure. I finished up adding the ribbon the opposite way. And now I'm completely done with my ribbon basket weave design. On our inspiration topiary, you can see that there's these little gold round beads or grommets that are at the intersection where the ribbon overlaps. So we need to come up with a solution. And after a lot of debating and a lot of thinking, I found these gold tacks, just these plain old regular gold tacks. These are going to do double duty for me. Not only are they going to look beautiful on my topiary, but they're going to be able to hold that ribbon in place. So what I did was I simply just pressed these tacks through the ribbon and directly into the egg. And since the egg is plastic, it went right into it. You do have to apply a pretty decent amount of pressure, but the tack definitely goes through the ribbon and the egg. And like I said before, not only is it pretty, but it's going to help to make sure that the ribbon doesn't slide around. Even though we glued the ribbon, the tacks provide extra holding power. Once I was finished pressing the tacks into the intersection of the ribbons on my first egg, I moved on and did the exact same thing on my second egg. I'm getting so excited with the way that our egg is looking. We are off to a great start. Now let's move on to our middle egg. Our inspiration piece has some pink squares. It looks like they were painted on. I'm sure they probably were for that price. We are going to do the exact same thing. So I got some pink craft paint and a paintbrush. Now I don't have squares, I have diamonds, which is okay, that's pretty similar. I can paint the pink paint in the indents of the diamond pattern easily. Once I got done with my first row, I stepped back and I looked at it and I didn't like it, you guys. It looked very juvenile to me. It looked like we were going to a little girl's birthday party or a baby shower, and I wasn't getting that high-end vibe. So I quickly wiped off the paint before it started to dry. We are now going to start with a blank slate, and we are going to revert back to what I know and love, which is gold. I love gold. I think it's classy. So I have this metallic gold craft paint that I purchased at Michael's, and we're going to use this instead of the pink. So round 2, I'm going to get my paintbrush back out and I'm going to do the exact same thing, which is just paint this gold paint on every other diamond. I'm doing it in a subtle way. I don't want this to be saturated in gold. I want it more of a soft accent color tone. This part does take quite a while because there were a lot of diamonds, so turn on some music or one of my videos and just get to painting. I am loving the way that this gold looks. It's so much better than the pink. You can always switch things up when you're doing dupes. That's the fun part. All you need to do is have some kind of an inspiration piece and then you can customize it to your own liking, like I'm doing with this middle egg. I'm swapping out the pink to gold. Once I was finished painting the diamonds on my first egg, I moved on and did the exact same thing on my second egg. Once I had painted all of the diamonds gold, I let it dry for 1 hour. Now it's time to decorate our top egg. In our inspiration piece, you can see that the stripes on the top egg are very smooth. Now that's a problem with mine because it has a textured surface. So I don't want to paint on those stripes because it's going to look really bumpy and wavy. What I'm going to use instead is some ribbon. Let me grab it really fast. It's right here. Look at how pretty this satin ribbon is. Oh, I just simply love it. And it's going to be smooth. So this is going to be a perfect alternative. What I'm going to do with this ribbon is I'm going to hot glue it to the top of our small egg. And then I ran a line of hot glue diagonally from the top to the bottom. Then I pressed the satin ribbon into the hot glue. Once I got to the bottom of the egg, I trimmed the ribbon and hot glued the ends so it would stay in place. I repeated this process with the second stripe. I simply just glued the ribbon, and I like the way that my stripes look. They are classy, they are smooth, and they look high-end. I repeated that process with the second small egg. I just hot glued the ribbon to create 2 stripes on our egg. And now we have our bottom, middle, and top eggs decorated beautifully and ready to be assembled. Well, almost ready to be assembled, because if you look at our inspiration piece, you can see that there are some dividers in between each of the circles. So I need to find a solution for that. So when in doubt, I always just head on over to Hobby Lobby. They have some great options to choose from. So I headed over to the wood section, and of course they have my favorite wood rounds. I use these all the time. So I got 2 of the larger wood rounds, and then there's also a package of 2 that are some smaller wood rounds. So these are going to be great dividers. The last thing I need is a finial to go on top. So I went 1 aisle over, and they had 2 finials that are going to be a perfect substitute. They're the great size, and I love the detail on these. What I'm going to do with all of my wood pieces is take them outside, and we are going to spray paint them gold. I'm going to start by painting the underside of the wood rounds first. I'm going to be using some gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. I painted the large rounds first. I'm also painting along the edge, and the finials are going to get a full coat of spray paint. Once each of these pieces had been completely saturated in the spray paint, I let them dry for 1 hour. Then I flipped them over and sprayed the rims once again, and also the top surface. I painted each of the 4 rounds in the spray paint. Once they were fully coated, I let them dry for an additional hour. All right, you guys, we have everything we need to create our topiaries, so let's assemble it. We're going to start by placing our large egg down first. Then I'm going to get my large gold wood round. I'm going to add hot glue to the top rim of our large egg. Then I'll take the large wood round and place it over the top. Next, I'm going to take my middle egg, add hot glue to the bottom of that egg, and then press it to the wood round. Next, I'm going to add the hot glue to the top of the middle egg, then take my smaller wood round and press that to the top. Next, I'm going to take my small egg. I ran a line of hot glue around the rim of this egg and pressed it to the wood round. And finally, I took my finial. I added a whole bunch of hot glue to the bottom of the finial and then pressed it to the top of the small egg. Once I was finished with my first egg topiary, I moved on and assembled my second egg topiary in the exact same order. Now we have our 2 spring topiaries that look absolutely fabulous. Okay, you guys, look at how cute my topiaries are. I cannot tell you how much I love these. What I'm going to do is take them and put them on top of these white urns. Not only does it elevate it height-wise, but it elevates it in an elegant way. I've got the 2 topiaries that are going to flank my mirror, and I actually have this dining room completely decorated for spring. We've got our tablescape, and the pink on the topiaries coordinates so beautifully with all the pink that we have on the table. I think that these look so pretty and classy in the room. I love the gold sparkle and shine that comes from the gold tacks on the bottom egg. And the satin ribbon above is classy and elegant. I also love our dividers of these wood rounds and the finial at the top. The gold ties in so beautifully, and it was a cheap, easy way to achieve a similar look to our inspiration piece. Let's look back and remember how much our Mackenzie-Childs topiaries cost. They were $999.90. If we were going to do 2 of those, it would cost $1,999.90. Let's calculate all of my costs after adding everything up to create 2 of my topiaries. The grand total was $43.19. I like that price so much better. So we saved well over $1,950 by creating our own. And you guys, I absolutely love my topiaries. They look so beautiful in this dining room. And we definitely got a big bang for our buck. I have gotten so many more requests for more Mackenzie-Childs dupes. I heard you loud and clear, and today we are doing some fresh new look for lesses. I think you will love them. So let's jump right in. It is this beautiful hand towel from the Mackenzie-Childs website. I love the check stripe along the bottom and the adorable bee in the center. There is also one that has a butterfly on it, which is equally as cute. And I think they're perfect for this time of year. You can use them for spring and summer. What I don't like about them is the price. Each one of these hand towels is $39.95, which is too much for me to pay, even though they are absolutely adorable. So we are going to make our own. And the first thing we need is some towels. So I went to Target and I found a package of 6 hand towels. The reason why I'm buying 6 of them is because we're actually going to be doing 3 different versions of this dupe. We are going to do some low-cost versions, and then we're going to spend a little bit more and get one that's a little more pricey. So I needed a package of 6, and buying in bulk a lot of times actually saves you money, because this package equaled out to be $1 per towel, which is a great deal. Now we've got our towels. We need some checked ribbon to go along the bottom. So I headed over to Hobby Lobby and I went to the ribbon section and I found this black and white checked ribbon. And this ribbon is identical to our inspiration piece. How lucky are we? And it was only $2.99 a spool, which is a great deal. Well, right next to the ribbon section at Hobby Lobby is the fabric section. And I thought, you know what? I bet you I could find some fabric that has some bees on it or some butterflies. So I wandered about and I got so lucky. I found a bolt of fabric that has a bee on it and a bolt of fabric that had butterflies on it. Both of these are going to be great alternatives because they are similar to the designs on our inspiration hand towels. I got half a yard of the butterfly fabric and half a yard of the bee fabric. One other thing that we are going to need at Hobby Lobby for this project is some fabric adhesive. I really love using the Heat and Bond fabric adhesive. They have a package there that's only $3.49. Now, I actually already have some of this left over, so I'm not going to buy anything new, but you can buy this Heat and Bond at Hobby Lobby. And then there's one other item that I purchased at Hobby Lobby that's a little more pricey. I'm not going to tell you about it now because we're going to be doing our less expensive hand towel versions first. Now, what I'm going to do is lay out my hand towel first. Then I'm going to get my ribbon. I'm going to string the ribbon across the width of my hand towel. Then I'm going to cut it to size. Next, I'm going to get my Heat and Bond iron-on adhesive. Now, there are 2 sides to this adhesive. There's this bumpy textured side, and then there's the paper side. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it to the bumpy side. Then we're going to get our ribbon, and we are going to place it over the top of the bumpy side just like this. Then I took my iron, which was heated to a medium-high heat. I pressed it over the ribbon and kept it in place for 2 seconds. You want to make sure that the ribbon is heated up appropriately. all the way down the length of the ribbon so that the adhesive fuses to the ribbon well. Now that everything's stuck together, I grabbed my fabric scissors and cut away the excess adhesive. Now I can remove the paper backing and place the ribbon on my hand towel. Then I took my iron, placed it over the ribbon, and this time I'm going to leave the iron in one place for about 8 seconds. What this does is heats up the adhesive and fuses the ribbon to the towel. Now that everything's been heated up, you can see how fabulously this ribbon is fused to the towel. All right, so now that my first hand towel has this ribbon on it, I'm going to move on and do the exact same thing with my remaining 2 towels. I fused the ribbon to the iron-on adhesive, removed the paper backing, placed the ribbon on my towel, heated it up so that everything's stuck together. Now I've got my 3 hand towels that have the black and white checked ribbon fused to it, just like our inspiration hand towels. We're going to be using the bee fabric first. Now this fabric has 3 different options that I can use. I chose the one that I thought resembled our inspiration piece the best. So what I did was I got my fabric scissors and I cut out a circle around the bee medallion. Then I placed it over the heat and bond, cut around the fabric so they were a perfect match. I got my iron, placed it over the fabric, and heated it up for a few seconds until they fused together. At this point, I can cut around my medallion precisely because the fabric is stiff. It's really easy to cut out any shape you want because the fabric is fused together and it will not fray. Once my medallion was cut out, I removed the paper backing and placed the medallion in the center of my hand towel. I took my iron once again, placed it over the top, and left it there for about 8 to 10 seconds. Now we've got our beautiful bee in the center of our hand towel. Now it's time to move on to our butterfly fabric. Isn't this so cute? I got so lucky finding fabric that was similar to our inspiration butterfly. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut around this butterfly. I placed it over the heat and bond, cut around the heat and bond, placed the iron over the fabric, left it there for a couple seconds, and then I cut out my butterfly shape more precisely. I removed the paper backing and placed it in the center of my hand towel above the ribbon. I placed my iron back over the top, left it there for about 8 seconds, and now I have my beautiful butterfly towel. I'm gonna hold them like this. Looks like I'm gonna fly away, but I'm not. Okay, we've got our bee on this first towel. How cute. We've got our butterfly on the second towel. And after I fold them, they're gonna look just like our inspiration hand towels. These are fabulous because I can place them in my kitchen and they are perfect for the springtime. Look at how cute that little bee is and our butterfly. They're colorful, they're cheerful. And these towels were so much more affordable than our inspiration towels. We're going to talk about the bee one first. After calculating the cost that went into creating our bee towel, it was $4.04. You guys, you can even cut down that cost further because look at how much fabric I used. I used one teeny little circle. I have all this fabric left over, so I definitely got more fabric than I needed to. But you know, this is really cute and I'm sure I'll be able to use it in another project. Now, the fabric for the butterfly fabric was 30 cents more. So the total of this one was $4.34 for our butterfly hand towel. Again, I used just that little piece right there, one little butterfly. So I could have cut down the costs a lot more. And you guys, these would be so perfect, not only to have around your house, but to give away as gifts. What a fun, affordable gift this would be to give to a family member or friends. Our inspiration towels were $39.95, so we saved around $35 per towel. Look at how cute and how similar our towels are to our inspiration hand towels. We definitely got a great look for less. And according to the directions on the heat and bond, these towels are washable. You can definitely wash the heat and bond. It says to do it in a delicate cycle on warm and then tumble dry low. So you can actually use these towels throughout the year, Throw them in the washing machine when you're done. Use them over and over again. I know that you will love them. Our less expensive towels are done, and now let's move on to our towel that's a little more expensive. Now, while I was at Hobby Lobby, I found this bee coaster that is fabulous. It's beaded, it's sparkly, it's got all kinds of intricate details on the bee. I absolutely loved it. And it is much more in line with our Mackenzie-Childs dupe towel. I couldn't resist, I purchased it, and this coaster was $6.99. Because of all of the beading on this coaster, we do not want to risk heating it up with our iron, so we are not going to be using the heat and bond to adhere our coaster to our towel this time. What we are going to use is some fabric glue. This stuff is fabulous. I use it all the time. So I'm going to just take my fabric glue and add a whole bunch of glue to the back of my bee coaster. I wanted to make sure that I got glue on every little part. Then I placed the bee coaster in the center of my hand towel above the ribbon in the same area as our inspiration towels. Then I let the fabric glue dry for several hours. And that's it, you guys. Look at this version of our Mackenzie-Childs hand towel. It is beautiful. I love it so much. The sparkly beads are so detailed and the design is fabulous. It looks much more expensive, but it was still over $30 less than our inspiration hand towel. After calculating all the costs that went into creating our more expensive hand towel, the grand total was $8.94. That is such a great deal. Now, one thing I will say about this is that this is going to be a beautiful display towel. I would not use this because I would not necessarily want to put this in the washing machine. So this is going to be just for pretty. You can put it out when you're having a party or friends over, or as just a gorgeous decor piece to display in your kitchen. Let's put this more expensive version up against our Mackenzie-Childs inspiration hand towel. This is a great comparison, and yet we still saved over $30. I love the 3 versions of hand towels we made. They are a much more affordable option to the Mackenzie-Childs hand towels, and they are just as beautiful. The next piece that we are going to dupe from the Mackenzie-Childs website is this large black market flower canister. It is absolutely beautiful. I love the vibrant flowers on this against the black backdrop. They pop. The sparkly gold knob at the top is so pretty. It adds an elegant touch. And we are mixing it up today. We are doing something very vibrant with a black backdrop, which is very different than what I typically do. So this is going to be a really fun project. Fun because we are going to save a lot of money. The original price of this canister is $119.95, but don't you worry, it's on sale right now for $79, which is still too expensive, so we are going to create our own. The first thing we need is a canister. They have a huge variety of canisters at Hobby Lobby. I picked one that was identical in size and almost identical in shape to our inspiration canister. The trickiest part about this dupe is trying to find a design that is similar in color and flowers to our inspiration. So I headed over to the scrapbook section, hoping to find something, and I lucked out. There was some scrapbook paper that is an almost identical design to our inspiration. I couldn't believe I found this paper that had the same vibrant flowers against a black backdrop. We are going to kick off this dupe by removing the lid from the canister, and then I'm going to take this lid outside. We are going to spray paint it black. I'm going to be using some black gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that the lid was completely covered in the spray paint. Once everything was sufficiently coated in the paint, I let it dry for an hour. While our lid is drying, we are going to take our scrapbook paper and adhere it to our canister. So I took the paper and I wrapped it around the canister, and guess what? We were short. So I had to think quickly on my feet. What we're gonna do first is just measure the piece that we have. So I got a ruler and a pencil and I measured out a 6-inch tall piece, and then I cut it out with some scissors. We have a little gap, it's only 2 inches, which is just fine. So I got my ruler back out and a pencil and I measured out an additional 2-inch segment of scrapbook paper and then cut it out. To attach the scrapbook paper to our container, I'm going to be using some Mod Podge and a sponge brush. I painted on a decent amount of this Mod Podge on the outside of this canister. I'm adding a lot because I want to make sure that the scrapbook paper adheres well. Next, I took my gorgeous floral scrapbook paper and pressed it firmly to the canister. Because it's rounded, you're going to need to hold the paper in place for a few seconds so that it will bond to the container. Then I took my extra piece of scrapbook paper and placed it on the back side. Then I pressed the paper firmly to the container to squeeze out all the air bubbles that may be trapped underneath. Once the paper was sufficiently adhered to the canister, I let it dry for about 30 minutes. Now it's time to add the top layer of Mod Podge. So I simply just got my sponge brush back out and I painted on a top layer. I painted a liberal amount of Mod Podge over the surface of the scrapbook paper. You want to make sure that the entire surface is sufficiently coated in the Mod Podge. Once it was, I let the container dry for an hour. At this point, the spray paint on the lid is dry, so I brought it back inside. We are going to add some scrapbook paper to the top of the lid. So I took my lid, I put it over the top of the scrapbook paper, I traced around it, and then I got my scissors out and cut the scrapbook paper into a perfectly sized circle. Next, I took my Mod Podge, painted it over the top of the lid. I'm adding a decent amount of Mod Podge to the top. And then I took my scrapbook circle, placed it over the top of the Mod Podge, and pressed it firmly to the lid. You want to press out any air bubbles that may be trapped underneath, that way your scrapbook paper will lay flat. Then I added a top layer of Mod Podge over the surface of the scrapbook paper. Once it was covered in the Mod Podge, I let the lid dry for an additional hour. Our inspiration canister had this sparkly crystal knob at the top with a gold backplate. While I was at Hobby Lobby, I headed down the knob and pull aisle, hoping that I could find something similar, and I did. I found a gorgeous crystal knob with a gold backplate. And all the knobs were 50% off, so hooray for that. My beautiful crystal knob with the gold backplate was only $2.50. The problem that I have with this knob is that the screw is far too long. Even if I drilled a hole through the lid, which would be pretty difficult, the screw would it would be too long and it would poke far into our canister. So what we're gonna do is remove this screw. So I twisted off the washer and the nut, then remove the back plate, and I was left with the knob alone. I'm going to add E6000 to the bottom of the back plate and press that to the top center of my lid. Then I added E6000 to the bottom of the crystal knob and placed that on top of the back plate. The only dilemma that we have now is that there is a hole at the top of the crystal knob where the screw originally was. We do not want to leave it as a hole. We want to cover it up with something. And I came up with using some tacks, just some plain gold tacks. So I added some E6000 to the top of the crystal knob, took my tack and pressed it into the center. The tack covered up the hole and helped our knob look like the original knob. Once the knob was in place, I let it dry for several hours. If you like high-end dupes, DIY decor, and interior design, and you are looking to do it all on a budget, then you have come to the right place. I post new weekly videos, so make sure you're subscribed so you can get all kinds of DIY decor inspiration. You guys, this canister is looking so good. So what we're gonna do now is twist the lid back onto the canister. And then I took a step back and I looked at it, and there was a whole lot of a black showing around the canister, and I did not like that. Actually, our original inspiration piece had the floral design that went down the sides of the lid. Now, I do not want to add an additional piece of scrapbook paper to our lid, so instead what I'm going to do to add an additional detail is use some gold washi tape. This is going to be perfect. So I took my gold washi tape, I pressed it to the center of the lid. I pulled it tightly and then pressed it back to the lid. I'm going to go around the entire perimeter of the lid, placing the gold washi tape in the center. Once I got back to the original starting point, I trimmed the washi tape with some scissors and then pressed it firmly together. We deviated a little bit from our inspiration lid, but I think that the final detail is just what this canister needs. It is a beautiful addition. And that is it. We are completely finished with our Mackenzie-Childs dupe canister. This is probably one of my favorite dupes that I've ever done. I'm going to put my canister up against the Mackenzie-Childs canister just to show you how similar they are. One thing that I did not add, however, to mine was the gold Mackenzie-Childs plaque right there because it's not Mackenzie-Childs. Surprise. So I did not add that to my canister, but besides that, everything else looks so similar. Not only does this look great on camera, but in person, it looks so classy. The vibrant colors pop against the black backdrop. The lid is so pretty with this gold washi tape stripe along the center. And of course, our knob at the top is just the little bit of sparkle and shine that this canister needed. And after calculating all the costs that went into creating my canister, the grand total was $12.18. That is a great savings over our inspiration piece, and I can't even tell you how much I love this piece. We still got a high-end look and saved so much money. I love a pretty tray, so when I saw this pink and white checked trinket tray on the Mackenzie-Childs website, I knew I wanted to recreate it. It's so feminine and perfect for spring. What's not perfect for spring is the price of $49.95, and the size of this is very small. It's only 9 inches by 5 1/4. So that's a teeny tiny little trinket tray. So not only are we going to create one that is similar, but it's going to be larger and much less expensive. So one thing that I've had a problem with in the past is trying to find a shade of pink that is not a little girl's birthday color shade of pink that's a little classier. Well, it's better if you can find something that's already made and you just like it. So when I was at Hobby Lobby, I lucked out and I found a pink and white checkered tray that is the exact same color tone to our inspiration tray. It's not the same shape, it's a rectangular shape, but it is much larger, which is a benefit to me. And it was in the spring section, so it was 40% off. So now we've got our tray, we need to find some butterflies. This was kind of a tricky solution that I had to come up with, but I decided to wander down the lawn and garden section at Hobby Lobby, and I found these stakes that had some butterflies on it. They were the perfect size butterflies, and there were 3 of these little butterflies on each one of the stake. And of course, they were 40% off. So I've got some small butterflies. Now I need a large butterfly. Now, I was at the Dollar Tree the other day and I happened to see some more of these lawn stakes with a larger butterfly on it. So I thought I'm gonna head back over to the Dollar Tree and see if it's still there. So I went to the gardening section and I found that large butterfly I had seen before, and at $1.25, you cannot go wrong. We have our butterflies now, but the problem is they are soldered on to these metal stakes. So we've got to figure out a way to remove the butterflies from the metal. Now, the smaller butterflies were actually pretty easy to remove. I pulled one of them off, and then I got some wire clippers and I clipped off the remaining butterflies. Now I've got my Dollar Tree butterfly. This one was a little trickier. I had to use my clippers and a whole lot of muscles. This took a while to try and cut this, but eventually it cut. So now I've got my one large butterfly and my 3 smaller butterflies. These butterflies are very vibrant in color, and so we need to change that. We are going to paint them white because I need a neutral backdrop to add additional color to in just a little bit. So I'm going to take my butterflies outside and I'm going to spray paint them in some white Rust-Oleum spray paint. I sprayed the back of the butterflies first. Once each of the butterflies were covered in the white spray paint, I let them dry for an hour. I came back, I flipped them over, and I painted the top side. Painting the butterflies white ensures that if you do see any metal underneath our design, it will be white, which is what we want. Once everything was coated in the paint, I let these butterflies dry for an additional hour. Our inspiration butterflies were in shades of blue and pink. I am not a great hand painter, but I do have a large selection of scrapbook paper, and I thought that is going to be my solution. So I rummaged through my scrapbook paper and I found 3 different selections that matched beautifully with our inspiration pieces. So what I'm going to do with this pink polka dot scrapbook paper is place it down, and then I'm going to get my large butterfly, flip it upside down, and then trace around it with a pencil. Then I took my scissors and cut out the butterfly. Then I did that with my remaining 2 butterflies on the 2 different colored pieces of scrapbook paper. Our inspiration tray only had 2 small butterflies and 1 large butterfly, so I have 1 left over, which is just fine. I like having a backup just in case. So what we're going to do now is paint the body of the butterfly. Our inspiration butterflies have a pink body, so we are going to do the exact same thing. Painted each of the 3 butterfly bodies in the pink craft paint, and then I let it dry for 1 hour. We are going to take our metal butterflies and our scrapbook paper, and we are going to combine them. We are going to add some Mod Podge to our metal butterfly and then put our scrapbook paper over the top. But first, we need to trim the wings so that we have individual wings to put on our metal butterfly. So after I did that, I added some Mod Podge to the first wing. I placed my scrapbook paper over the wing, pressed the paper and the metal firmly together. Then I added Mod Podge to the opposite wing. I placed the scrapbook paper on the wing and pressed it firmly together. And then I moved on to my smaller butterflies. Again, I'm cutting the wings out so I have individual wings. I'm adding Mod Podge to the metal wing, and then I'm taking my scrapbook paper wings and placing it over the Mod Podge. Once the 6 wings had their beautifully colored scrapbook paper Mod Podged over the top, I let it dry for 20 minutes. Then I came back and painted on a top layer of Mod Podge. I made sure that the wings were completely covered in the Mod Podge, and it's okay if the Mod Podge gets onto the body of the butterfly. All it will do is seal the craft paint. Once each of the wings had been covered in the Mod Podge, I let it dry for 1 hour. Now comes the tricky part. How am I going to adhere these butterflies to the rim of the plate and have them not fall over and stay in place? Well, what I'm going to be using is some E6000. So I added E6000 to the back of the butterflies and then placed them on the tray. The problem is they are not going to hover right there on the tray. They are going to want to fall over. So what I did was I got some tape, just a little roll of tape, and I placed it under especially the large butterfly. That way it didn't droop while it was drying. Once I had glued all the butterflies onto the tray, I let it dry overnight. The next morning I went to check out my tray with trepidation, and hooray, it dried overnight. And look at this, you guys. We are done with our tray. Look at how beautiful this is. What a fun piece to have for springtime, Mother's Day. You could definitely put this in a girl's room or even in an office. You could put some fun little office supplies. You could put this in a kitchen with a candle. And because we didn't do anything to the surface, it's food safe, so you could put some fun little cupcakes on it or whatever you wanted to. Using the metal butterflies from the lawn picks was such a great solution. They are firm and sturdy and will hold their shape. The scrapbook paper that we put on top of the wings is a great match in color and design to our inspiration tray. If you remember, our inspiration tray was $49.95. After calculating all the costs that went into creating our beautiful Trinket tray, the grand total was $12.32. What a fabulous price for a fabulous tray. Plus, ours is much larger. Our next Mackenzie-Childs dupe is a Tutti Frutti lemon vase. For the name alone, I had to dupe it, right? How cute. Everybody wants a Tutti Frutti lemon vase. So not only is this adorable, but I think it is so fantastic for this time of year. First up, I love that pink color tone, and it's also got those lemons on it, and the lemons will coordinate beautifully with our lemon topiary. And of course, it's got that black and white iconic Mackenzie-Childs check around the top. So this is going to be a really fun piece to dupe. Now, let's check out the price. It was $249.95. That's a lot of money for a vase, and I don't want to spend that. So what we're going to do is recreate it. Now, the first thing we need is a vase. Now, I looked for a very long time, you guys, to try and find a glass vase that was identical to this container, and I just couldn't find one. But at Hobby Lobby, I found one that was pretty close. It's actually larger in size than our inspiration piece, and it does have some similar curves to it. And I thought this is going to be a great substitute. Now, the next thing we need to match is the color. The pink on our inspiration vase is so pretty. I really wanted to find something that was very similar. So at Hobby Lobby, I found some paint. They have a great selection of paint over there, and it's typically very affordable. In fact, this paint is only $5.99 per can. Even at Walmart, it's a couple dollars more for the spray paint. So if you're gonna go shopping at Lowe's or Home Depot, Target, it's always gonna be a little more expensive. So whenever I'm at Hobby Lobby, I will pick up a can or two of spray paint for the price alone. Now, not only is this a good price, but look at that color, you guys. It's so similar to the vase, so I knew that this satin ballet slipper was gonna be the right choice. So what I'm gonna do is take my vase outside, and I'm going to spray it in this pink spray paint. I made sure that the vase was completely covered in this beautiful shade of ballet pink paint. Once the surface had been saturated in the paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. The lemons on the Inspiration Mackenzie-Childs vase are 3D. Now, I thought about doing some 3D lemons, just taking a lemon like what we used on the Topiary, cutting it in half and then pressing it to the container. But I thought if I did that, it wouldn't lay flat because our container is curved. And so I had to come up with another solution. Otherwise, that just would have bothered me. So what we're gonna do is veer just a little bit off and create something unique and special. What I'm going to be using is some scrapbook paper. This scrapbook paper is very similar to the lemons that we have on our vase, and that pink color tone is an almost identical match to the pink spray paint. So this is going to be perfect. What I'm gonna do is cut out some lemon segments so I have individual pieces. I ended up cutting out 9 different lemon and leaf segments. I'm going to be adhering my scrapbook paper to the vase with some Mod Podge and a regular paintbrush. So what I'm gonna do is just paint this Mod Podge onto the back of the scrapbook paper. The reason why I'm doing it this way is because I do not want to see the Mod Podge on the container. The paint is matte and it's already perfect, so I don't want to cover it up with the Mod Podge because sometimes that Mod Podge leaves like a shiny sheen on it. I don't want that shiny sheen, so we're going to add the Mod Podge to the back of the scrapbook paper alone. And if there's any Mod Podge that squeezes out the sides, I'm just gonna wipe that off. Once all 9 of my cardstock lemon segments had been adhered to the vase, I painted on a top layer of the Mod Podge. Again, I'm making sure that the Mod Podge is painted directly over the surface of the scrapbook paper. If any Mod Podge did get onto the vase, I just wiped it off. Once each of the 9 pieces had been covered in the Mod Podge, I let it dry for 1 hour. Now it's time to add the iconic black and white Mackenzie-Childs check to the top. This ribbon is from Hobby Lobby and it is a perfect match. So what I'm going to do is hot glue this ribbon to the top of the vase. I added a dab of the hot glue to the top, and you can see that I did leave a space at the top because I knew I was going to be putting this ribbon around the rim. I continued to add the hot glue and press the ribbon into the hot glue around the entire top. This ribbon definitely finishes off this decor piece. And now we are finished with our Tutti Frutti lemon vase. Look at how cute this is, you guys. I love this vase. So far, this is number 1 for me. We'll see about the rest, but right now this is in first place. The color tone on this vase is stunning. I love the pink, and I love how it contrasts with all of our lemons that just cascade down the front, and I've got them all around this container. So no side goes without a lemon. And then of course we've got the black and white checked ribbon at the top. This looks just as beautiful as the Mackenzie-Childs vase. It's almost an identical replica. However, we know it's not going to replicate the $249.95 cost of the Mackenzie-Childs Tutti Frutti lemon vase. After calculating all the costs that went into creating my vase, the grand total was... This is such a versatile piece that is perfect for this time of year. You could add some flowers to it, you could put some little lemon picks in it, or you could even put a battery operated candle down in the center. It would be a fun decorative accent to add to any decor vignette. This Courtly Capiz gift tower, isn't it fabulous? I love the color, the designs, the stripes and the checks and the polka dots. What a fun piece to display over the holiday season. What's not fun is the price of $99.95. That's pretty high, especially for the size of this. It's only 4.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. So it's an itty bitty little thing. So our dupe is going to be almost 5 times as big, but it's not going to cost 5 times as much. What we need to start off with is some boxes. So I headed on over to Hobby Lobby. Their party section has a great selection of boxes. So I picked up 3 different sizes. I've got a large, a medium, and a small. The next thing we need is some gift wrap, and they had a whole bunch of gift wrap on that same aisle. And guess what? They had a black and white check design, and this wrapping paper was 50% off, so we are already off to a fabulous start. What we need to do is cut this wrapping paper into a size that will fit around the perimeter of our box. So I laid out my wrapping paper, and then I took my box and I placed it over the center. I wrapped the paper around the box. Then I got some Scotch tape and I taped the wrapping paper to the box. Next, I took the lid and I flipped it over and I put it over the top of the wrapping paper. I cut a size that would go around it, and then I simply wrapped this wrapping paper around the box and taped it in place. Now we need some wrapping paper for our medium-sized box, and right next to the black and white checked wrapping paper was a black and white striped paper. How lucky are we? And once again, this was 50% off. Hooray. So what we're going to do is the exact same thing. We're going to lay out our wrapping paper, put the box over the top, cut out the correct size. I pull the wrapping paper tightly because we don't want to have any gapping around the box. And then I taped it in place. Then I took my square box, placed that over the wrapping paper, cut out the correct size. Then I wrapped it around the lid and taped it in place. Next is the smallest box, and you can see that it's got some polka dots in different sizes on this box. Well, I couldn't find any wrapping paper or scrapbook paper that would mimic this design. You can use some stickers. That would be fantastic if you found some black circle stickers. You could also just cut them out yourself. Just get some black cardstock and cut out a bunch of different circles in a bunch of different sizes, and you could either tape or hot glue them to the box. What I'm gonna do is get out my Cricut Maker, and I'm just gonna have it cut out different size circles on some permanent black vinyl. This is gonna work for me, but there are plenty of other options that you can use without using a Cricut Maker. So I just peeled away the excess vinyl from around my circles, and then I placed these circles in various areas around my box. These vinyl circles are basically stickers, so once again, if you can't find wrapping paper that mimics that polka dot look, you can get some stickers in multi-sizes and place them all over your box. Once I had the circles on the box itself, I moved on and added the circles to the lid. Now all three of my boxes have been wrapped very affordably in an identical design as our inspiration piece. Now we need some ribbon in this black and white check design. I headed over to Michael's because this is exactly what I was looking for, and they had it. I love this size. It's going to be perfect for our stacking boxes. On our inspiration boxes, you can see that there's a gold outline on either side of our ribbon. We do not have that on this ribbon. So we need to figure out a way to get that gold line. Now we are going to be doing it in two different ways. So if the first way doesn't work for you, I've got another way coming up. What I'm gonna do is just get some gold permanent vinyl, and I'm going to create a couple of different sized rectangles that we can put on our stacking boxes behind the ribbon. So I'm just going to have my Cricut Maker cut out a variety of different sized rectangles in this champagne gold permanent vinyl. The width of all these rectangles is going to remain the same, but the height is going to vary because of the height of the boxes. I weeded away the excess vinyl from around my rectangles. Once again, I'm using these vinyl pieces like stickers, so if you have a giant gold sticker, you can definitely use that. I'm sticking all of these vinyl rectangles in the center on all four sides of the three boxes. You can see that some of the gold stickers don't go all the way to the top. That's not a big deal. I did that on purpose because we need to be able to put the lid on, and we don't want anything preventing the lid from being pressed back onto the top of the box. So now that we've got our vinyl pressed onto our box, we are now going to add our ribbon. I measured the ribbon and cut them into 4 segments. Then I added a squiggle of hot glue to the center of our vinyl sticker and then pressed the ribbon firmly into the hot glue. Then I repeated this process on all 4 rectangles. I added the hot glue to the sticker and pressed the ribbon into the hot glue. Once I was finished with the largest box, I moved on to the medium-sized stripe box. I added hot glue to the center of the vinyl sticker and then pressed the ribbon into the hot glue. I repeated this process on all 4 sides, and then I moved on to the polka dot box. Once again, I cut out 4 identically sized ribbon segments and hot glued them to the center of the gold vinyl. Once I was finished adding the ribbon to the polka dot box, I placed the lids back on all 3 of my boxes, and look at how fabulous they are. They are an identical match to our inspiration boxes. So at this point, all we need to do is stack our boxes. So I added some hot glue to the bottom of the medium-sized box and pressed it to the center top of the large box. I made sure that the ribbons lined up perfectly, and then I got my polka dot box. I added hot glue to the bottom of the smallest box and pressed it into the center of the striped box. I am loving the way that this is looking right now, but do you know what would make it even better is a giant bow at the top. And this is where the alternative option for gold behind the ribbon comes into play. Now I have some wide gold ribbon. This is Christmas ribbon I purchased at Michael's a couple of years ago. I do not have a lot of this ribbon. This is all I have left. And in fact, that was the main reason why I went to Michael's in the first place, was to see if they had any more of this gold ribbon. They don't right now. So because this ribbon is sparse, that is why I did the 2 different techniques. So let me show you how to do this technique. I rolled out my gold ribbon, and then I added some hot glue to the center of the gold ribbon, and then pressed the black and white checked ribbon into the hot glue. I'm going to continue to add the hot glue to the gold ribbon and then press the black and white ribbon into the center. A lot of times, intricately designed ribbon can be really pricey. This is such a fun way to create a custom ribbon at an affordable price. I continued to layer my ribbons on top of each other, and in no time I had a custom ribbon that's going to be perfect for my bow. The way I'm going to be creating my bow is going to be different than just taking ribbon and tying it into a bow. What I'm going to do is cut this long segment of ribbon into multiple different smaller segments. I've got 2 segments for the tails of the bow, and then I have some longer segments that we are going to loop together into some circles. I take the first long segment of ribbon, added hot glue to the end, and then pressed the opposite end of the ribbon into the hot glue to create a circle. Then I repeated the process with the second segment of a long ribbon. Then I'm going to take the loops and intermix them and then pinch the center together. Then I cut a smaller segment of the black and white checked ribbon and wrapped it around the center of the loops and then hot glued this small segment in place. And now I'm just going to take the shorter tail segments and we're going to dovetail the end of it. So I folded the ribbon in half and then cut a diagonal at the bottom to create a dovetail. Then I added hot glue to the top of the polka dot box and pressed my first ribbon tail into the hot glue. I added more hot glue to the top of the box and pressed the second ribbon tail into the hot glue. Then I added a giant dab of hot glue to the top of the box and pressed the bow into the hot glue. And now I have a beautiful multi-layered ribbon at the top of our gift box tower. And we are completely done. Check out our gift box tower. It is absolutely magnificent. I love the various designs that we have on our box, from the black and white checked on the large box to our striped medium-sized box and that cute little polka dot box at the top. Isn't that just adorable? I cannot even tell you how much I love this. And then check out that bow. Look at our pretty little bow with our layered ribbons. It is definitely the piece de resistance that this box needed at the top. So let's take a minute and remember how much our Mackenzie-Childs stacking gift box cost. It was $99.95, and do you remember it was just kind of teeny tiny? It was like a 4x11, so it was much smaller than our box. After calculating all the costs that went into creating my gift box tower, the grand total was $23.46. What a fantastic price. And I'm going to put my box right up next to the Mackenzie-Childs box so you guys can see how similar they are. Check that out. They're almost indistinguishable. But one big difference is the size. Mine is half the size of me, and our inspiration piece is much, much smaller. I love the way that our stacking boxes turned out, and I love the price and the size of mine so much more. We definitely were able to get a fabulous holiday look for much less. I am going to leave our stacked gift boxes right here for the rest of the video. That way we can admire how fabulous they look. Well, I think it's time to move on to our next Mackenzie-Childs inspired dupe, and it is this Noel tall pearl tree. I have actually had my eye on this tree for quite some time. I think it looks so classy and elegant. I love the gold, I love the black and white checks, and I love those pearls on there. We are actually going to be using a lot of crystals and pearls in my decorations this year, so this is going to fit right in with that theme. Now let's check out the price of this Christmas tree. If you want to buy this from their website, you're going to have to pay $189.95. We do not want to do that, and so that is why we are making our own. Now the first thing we need is some kind of a form so we can create our Christmas tree. Well, while I was at Hobby Lobby, I went down their styrofoam aisle and they had several options for styrofoam cone forms. I picked up one that was the same size as our inspiration Christmas tree. The next thing that we are going to need is a whole bunch of holly leaves. Now I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that you can get this look. The first is just to purchase a package of holly leaves. If you can find some, good for you. I could not find any. So I decided that I needed to cut them out, and that's something else you could do. You could cut out these beautiful leaves with some gold paper or some black and white check paper. I'm gonna take the easy way out, you guys. I'm just going to have my Cricut Maker once again cut out these holly leaves on some gold metallic paper. This is easy because I can get a uniform size leaf and it saves me a whole lot of time. I peeled away the excess metallic paper from my holly leaves and I peeled each leaf away from the sticky mat. I have about 60 gold leaves. And this paper is fantastic. This is from a book of cardstock. I love how it's shimmer and shiny. It's going to be perfect for our leaves. Now we need to add our leaves to the styrofoam cone. We are going to do that with some hot glue. I'm adding each of these leaves to the styrofoam cone individually. I added a dab of hot glue to the styrofoam cone and then pressed the gold leaf into the hot glue. I'm going to be hot gluing these leaves around the bottom first. I'm doing this process in layers. I want to keep the leaves uniform and in line, so I continue to add hot glue rows of leaves to the styrofoam cone all the way up to the top. You can see that I do have some spacing in some areas because we need to have a few gaps here and there to add the rest of the details to the tree later on. So now that all my gold leaves are in place, we need some black and white checked leaves, and I'm going to be using this black and white checked paper that I purchased at Michael's. It was only 99 cents, which is a great deal. So I'm going to once again just have my Cricut Maker cut out uniform holly leaves on this paper. I peeled away the leaves from the sticky mat. I don't need nearly as many of these black and white leaves as I did with the gold leaves because these leaves are going to be the accent leaves. I'm going to hot glue these leaves to the cone in sporadic areas around the tree. I'm going to be filling up any gaps so you can't see the cone underneath. I'm also going to be spreading these leaves out so they don't clump up in one area. Now we've got our gold leaves and our black and white leaves glued to our styrofoam cone, and now it's time for the pretty part. We need some pearls. While I was at Hobby Lobby, I went down the jewelry making aisle and I found a package of pearls and it was 50% off, hooray. And look at how pretty these pearls are. They're actually a pretty good size and I love the sheen that's on them. They're going to be so perfect. So what I'm going to do is just add some hot glue to the pearls and then press them onto the cone Christmas tree. Once again, I'm spacing these pearls out. I'm also going to be adding them to any vacant spaces where the styrofoam is still visible. I think that these pearls are an elegant addition to this tree, and I also like how they're 3D, so it adds extra dimension. The only thing we need to do now is add a pretty bow to the top. I have this black and white checked ribbon that I purchased quite a while ago from Hobby Lobby. It's the perfect size. It's not quite as big as the thicker ribbon that we used on our stacky boxes. This is thinner. It's going to be perfect for our topper. I'm going to be creating this bow the exact same way that I created this bow. So I'm going to cut this ribbon into different segments. I'm going to hot glue the longer segments together to create circles. Then I'm going to intertwine them. I pinched the center of the loops and wrapped a shorter segment of the ribbon around the center and hot glued it in place. Then I'm going to dovetail the ends of the ribbon tails and hot glue them to the back of the bow. And now we have this perfectly designed ribbon that mimics our inspiration piece identically. I want my bow to be able to sit upright. So what I did was I got one of the pearls and I hot glued that to the top of the cone so my bow had something to rest against. Once the pearl had been hot glued in place, I added additional hot glue to the top of the cone and then pressed my bow into the hot glue. And that's it. We are done with our Courtney Noel Pearl Christmas tree. Look at how fabulous this thing is. It's everything I wanted and more. I love the shimmer and shine that reflects from the gold metallic holly leaves. The black and white check leaves are a fantastic contrast, both in color and design to the gold. These pearls are my favorite part. They're just such a fun little ornament to put on our trees. And since we're going to be using a lot of pearls in my Christmas decor this year, the pearls on this tree are perfect. And of course, look at that cute little bow at the top. Isn't that the perfect tree topper? It's just the right size. It doesn't overwhelm the tree. It's just enough. So let's look back at our Inspiration Mackenzie-Childs Pearl Christmas tree. It was $189.95. After calculating all the costs that went into creating my stunner of a Christmas tree, the grand total was only $14.22. Isn't that a fantastic price? And ours are the same size. I'm going to put them right up next to each other once again so you can see how similar they look. My tree looks almost identical to the expensive Mackenzie-Childs Christmas tree. However, we were able to save around $175 and we still got that high-end look. I love decorating with Christmas village houses. I do it every year and I am definitely planning on doing it this year as well. So when I saw this gingerbread illuminated house on the Mackenzie-Childs website, I knew I needed one, but I did not need one for the price of $995.95. Yikes, that's pretty steep. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep this in the back of my mind, and whenever I go shopping, I'm going to see if I can find a gingerbread house that is similar. Well, this past week, my daughters, Ellie and Violet, and I went out Christmas shopping, and we went to Burlington, and lo and behold, they had a gingerbread house that was so similar, I had to buy it. It's not identical, but it is pretty close. Look at all that scroll work that's on this beautiful gingerbread house, and it is illuminated. It's got a light inside, so it's similar in that way too. The way that it is not similar is that this gingerbread house was only $19.95, which is a fantastic price. Our Inspiration gingerbread house has a black and white checked roof. Mine does not, and I don't want to do anything permanent to this roof because I may want to use this gingerbread house in a different display either this year or next year, so I'm going to be doing something that is semi-permanent. And we are once again going to take advantage of our black and white checked wrapping paper. So what I did was I cut out a rectangular segment. I laid it over half of the roof. This side has a dormer window, so we need to cut around it. I'm going to be using an X-Acto knife to cut out a triangle so that the paper can lay flat. I'm going to be adhering this wrapping paper to the roof with a little bit of hot glue. The hot glue will peel off eventually if I don't want to make this black and white wrapping paper permanent. It's a great fix for now, so I'm going to add a little bit of the hot glue around the edges of the wrapping paper so it will stay in place. Next, I just turned my gingerbread house around, so now we have the opposite side of the roof. And once again, I just cut out a segment of wrapping paper that would fit over the side of the roof. We have a chimney on this side, so I cut around the chimney area so that the wrapping paper would lay flat. Then I added a little bit of hot glue so that the wrapping paper would stay in place. How easy was that? That was such a piece of cake, and now we have a roof that mimics our Inspiration piece beautifully. The next thing we need to do is create two mini Christmas trees. You can see that there are a Christmas tree that flanks either side of the doorway on our Inspiration piece. We want to do the same thing. So I need some little teeny tiny cups. I went to the Dollar Tree and I headed over to the plastic party dishware and I picked up a package of small shot glasses. These are the perfect size for our tree container. Now they are clear, so we need to change that. Once again, to get that striped look, I am going to be using the striped wrapping paper that we got at Hobby Lobby. So what I did was cut out some arched segments of wrapping paper that will go around our curved glasses. I added hot glue to the plastic glasses and then wrapped the wrapping paper around it and then repeated this process on the second glass. I simply just hot glued this wrapping paper in place. That was so easy to do, and look at how fabulous they are. They are cheap, affordable, and simple. To hold our trees in place, I'm going to be using some white styrofoam. I just got a knife and I cut off a square, and then I placed them inside of our glasses. There are a few options that you can use as trees to go inside of these little containers. The first thing I thought of was a mini white bottle brush Christmas tree. Wouldn't that look so cute inside of these containers? I couldn't find any right now that were small enough. So what I did was I just went into my bedroom, and I have a garland in there, and I just cut off a couple of these little segments of garland. Don't those look just like little Christmas trees, little flock Christmas trees? And you know what, you guys, no one's gonna ever even know that those pieces are missing from the garland. Well, I guess you and I will know, but it'll be our secret. So what I'm going to do is take my little segments of garland, and I'm going to press them inside of the styrofoam. The styrofoam will keep these trees upright and hold them in place. Aren't these little mini Christmas trees adorable? They're going to look so cute, flanking either side of our gingerbread doorway. Speaking of our gingerbread house, we're done, you guys. Check out how cute our gingerbread house looks. That was so easy to do. Just by using some wrapping paper, we were able to get that iconic Mackenzie-Childs look. And once again, this is semi-permanent, so I can remove the wrapping paper later on if I want to use the house in a different way. By finding and purchasing this gingerbread house at Burlington for $19.99, and by making our little trees from items that we got at the Dollar Tree and my bedroom, we were definitely able to keep costs down. Speaking of costs, let's go back and remember our Mackenzie-Childs illuminated gingerbread house. It is so cute, but for the price of $999.95, that's a little too expensive. After calculating all the costs that went into creating my beautiful gingerbread house and trees, the grand total was $22.39. Now, I did not calculate the cost of the wrapping paper into this particular DIY because I already calculated it into the cost of our boxes, and we don't really need to do it again. Our gingerbread house itself does not mimic the Mackenzie-Childs gingerbread house, but it definitely takes inspiration from it. I'm going to place my gingerbread house and trees right up next to our inspiration piece. Once again, they look so similar, but we were able to save around $975 creating our own. What a fantastic deal. Isn't this pretty? Look at how beautiful those reindeer are with the black and white check on the container. And also the size of this tree is fantastic. It's perfect for any tabletop, and the ornaments on there are also so great. It would go with any type of decor that you had for Christmas. Everything is fabulous about this tree except for that price of $449.95. Wowza. We're not going to pay that, and I know we can get a similar, almost identical look for hundreds less. So the first thing we need is a container. I have a glass container that I purchased at the thrift store a couple of years ago, and it's the perfect size. In our previous Mackenzie-Childs dupe video that we did like a couple months ago, I picked up this black and white checked wrapping paper at Hobby Lobby. So we're gonna use it again because I have plenty left over. It's just in the party section by the gift bags and the boxes. So what I'm gonna do with my wrapping paper is cut a strip that's long enough to go all the way around the container. Once I was done cutting it out, I wrapped it around the container and taped it together in the back. The bottom section of the container is white, and I didn't have any white wrapping paper, but what I did have was some wrapping paper that had little Christmas trees on it that we've used before this year. And guess what? If you flip it over, it's white. So we're going to use the reverse side. Once again, I'm going to cut out a strip that's long enough to go around the perimeter of my container. I wrapped it around the container and then taped it in the back. If you look closely at the container, you can see that there are some reindeer and trees on the bottom. It's really kind of hard to see because it's tone on tone. So we're going to create our own, and I'm going to be using my Cricut Maker. I found some reindeer and trees on the Cricut Design Space, and I had my Cricut Maker cut out these white reindeer and trees on removable vinyl. I weeded away the excess vinyl from around my reindeer and trees. I put transfer tape over the top, and then I pressed it firmly to the container. Then I removed the transfer tape. I added plenty of these reindeer and trees around the bottom of the container because we want the perimeter to have a reindeer, just like our inspiration piece. This design is very subtle, like our inspiration container, but as you get up close, you can see those cute reindeer and the trees, and it definitely makes it feel like Christmas. Another very subtle design that's on the bottom of the container are some gold snowflakes. Well, I didn't have any gold snowflakes, but once again, what I did have is plenty of wrapping paper. I have some wrapping paper with gold snowflakes on it, and so what I'm gonna do is just cut out a few of these snowflakes into individual snowflakes. I only needed 5 or 6. Once I had them cut out, I added hot glue to the container and then pressed the snowflakes into the hot glue. I'm going to scatter the snowflakes around the upper portion of the container. I love these subtle gold snowflakes. They are a fun addition. And that's it for the container. Doesn't that look like a spitting image of our inspiration container? I love that black and white check, the reindeer, the trees, and the gold snowflakes. It is fantastic. So now that our container's done, we need a tree to go in the container. Well, a couple of years ago, I was at the thrift store. I'm telling you, the thrift store is a great place to go shopping, and I found a perfect size tree. It was only a couple of bucks. It was a fantastic price. The shape is similar to our inspiration piece. Plus, once again, I didn't have to buy anything new, which is a score for Christmas decorations. The next thing that we're gonna need is to gather up all kinds of ornaments. I've got some cream ornaments, I've got some gold ornaments in a variety of different sizes and shapes. But the ornament that I do not have is those black ornaments with the gold polka dots on it. I looked for a while to try and find some black ornaments, and that is not a popular color at Christmas time. So what we're gonna do is just make our own. I am once again going to be using an ornament that I already have. I've got 2 green plastic ornaments, and I'm going to paint them black. So I took them outside and I'm spraying them in some flat black paint because we want our ornaments to be matte. I placed these ornaments on wooden skewers so I could paint around the entire perimeter of the ornaments. Once they had both been completely saturated in the flat black spray paint, I let them dry for 1 hour. There's a couple of different ways that you can create those gold polka dots on your ornament. The first is to get a gold paint pen and just draw on those circles. You could also get some circular gold stickers and place those on the ornaments as well. Guess what we're gonna use? Some gold tacks. And the reason why we're using gold tacks is because I hadn't put these away yet from last week when we decorated our bedroom for Christmas. I used these tacks to hang up the wreaths that hung in front of my mirrors in my bedroom. These were still out and the light bulb went off, and I thought, yes, we're gonna use a tack. So all I'm gonna do is take my gold tacks and I'm going to press them hard into the ornaments. I added several of these tacks to each ornament. They popped right in. So if you're going to use the tacks, definitely make sure the ornaments are plastic. If they were glass, we would have a bad situation on our hands. So I just continue to add these gold tacks to both of the ornaments, and look at how fantastic these look. They are so similar to the black and gold inspiration ornaments, and we were able to create them for super cheap. Besides our ornaments, we also need some greenery. I have a stem of some frosted leaves with white berries, pine cones, and gold leaves. And now comes the easy part. All we need to do is place our ornaments and greenery in the same areas as our inspiration Christmas tree. First up, we're going to arrange the black and gold ornaments on the tree. Then I added my pine cones and then moved on to all the ornaments. I'm filling my tree as full as the Mackenzie-Childs tree. And at the top, we need a ribbon. Once again, I am using some black and white checked ribbon that is left over from previous Mackenzie-Childs dupes. I purchased this ribbon at Hobby Lobby. It's the perfect size and width. I'm going to make several loops with the ribbon, and then I'm going to get a segment of floral wire and wrap it around the bottom of the ribbon. And then I'm going to twist the wires together. Now I can take my looped bow and add it to the top of our tree. And now we are done. Isn't this a spitting image of our Mackenzie-Childs inspiration piece? It has the same ornaments, it's the same size. The container is so similar with its black and white check, the reindeer, the trees, and the snowflakes. And if you have a smaller space to decorate, a tabletop tree is a perfect solution because you can put it obviously on top of a table. You could put it on the kitchen counter. You could put it on a nightstand in your bedroom. There's plenty of places where you could put a tabletop Christmas tree. So let's take a quick look back at our inspiration Mackenzie-Childs tabletop Christmas tree. It was so pretty, but it was a pretty penny. It was $449.95. After adding up all the costs that went into creating my tabletop Christmas tree, the grand total was, what a huge savings and what a fantastic look for less. I'm going to put them right next to each other so you can see how similar they are. We were able to create a beautiful piece of Christmas decor with a little ingenuity, some creativity, and a lot of items that we had around the house. Our next Mackenzie-Childs Christmas dupe is this Deck the Halls serving platter. Isn't this the cutest thing? I love the black and white check around the rim. Plus it's got all those festive, bright colored ornaments. It's just too cute. But what's not cute is the price. This serving platter is $79.95, which is pretty pricey. So what we're gonna do is, of course, make one for much, much less. The first thing that we need is a platter. Well, Natalie and I have been thrifting a lot in the last couple of months, and I actually picked up a set of 2 plastic platters when we were at Goodwill. I like to buy things at the thrift store and keep them in my back pocket for times like this. A set of 2 of these plastic platters was only $3.99 for both. And look at how huge my platter is. This is gonna work out so well. The problem with this platter is that it's clear and we need a white platter. So what I'm gonna do is take this outside. I'm going to flip it upside down and paint the underside using my favorite white gloss Rust-Oleum spray paint. I made sure that the entire underside of the platter was covered in the white spray paint. Once it was, I let it dry for 1 hour. We are once again going to take advantage of our black and white wrapping paper. We're gonna use this to create the rim around our platter. So what I'm gonna do is take our platter and place it over the wrapping paper. I got a pencil and traced around the perimeter of the platter. Then I got a pair of scissors and I cut out this circle. Because the Mackenzie-Childs platter has the black and white check on the rim alone, we need to cut out a center in our circle. So I'm gonna get a charger. This is actually a charger that we duped before. This is another Mackenzie-Childs dupe, but it's the perfect size, so we're gonna use it. I placed it in the center of my circle, once again got a pencil, traced around it, and then cut out the inner circle. Now we have the perfect wrapping paper shape that will fit around the rim of our platter. Our inspiration platter had some brightly colored ornaments on top of the black and white check around the rim. I need to do that same thing, and we're gonna be using some scrapbook paper. I have this adorable scrapbook paper that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. They are a little different than our inspiration ornaments, which is okay. They're a little bit smaller, but it's gonna work. So what I'm gonna do is just cut out these ornaments individually. I cut out the red ornaments, the green ornaments, and cream ornaments on the first sheet, and then I cut out more ornaments on the second sheet. So I cut more of a grouping of ornaments, And then I also cut out some leaves and holly berries on the third sheet of scrapbook paper. This was a super easy and affordable way to get similar sized ornaments to put around the rim. To adhere my scrapbook paper and wrapping paper to my platter, I'm going to be using some dishwasher safe Mod Podge. I purchased this at Hobby Lobby, but you can get it online at Amazon. I got this Mod Podge and a sponge brush. I painted the Mod Podge around the rim with a sponge brush, then I pressed the wrapping paper into the Mod Podge. You're going to want to press firmly so that you get out any air bubbles and so the wrapping paper can lay as flat as possible. If there is some creasing, don't worry about it right now. We're going to hide that in just a little bit. I continued to add the Mod Podge to the rim of the platter and then pressed my wrapping paper into the Mod Podge. Now that the black and white wrapping paper has been glued to the platter, I can take my individual ornaments and leaves and scatter those throughout the rim as well. I am going to glue them in place once again using the dishwasher safe Mod Podge. I'm painting the Mod Podge onto the underside of the scrapbook paper and then pressing it to the platter. I spread all these ornaments and leaves out equally around the rim of the platter. If there was any creasing from the black and white wrapping paper, I just put an ornament over the top. I'm going to Mod Podge all these individual paper pieces in place. Once my scrapbook paper ornaments had been adhered to the platter, I let it dry for about 20 minutes. Then I came back and added a top layer of Mod Podge over the surface of the wrapping paper and the scrapbook paper. The Mod Podge will seal the wrapping paper and scrapbook paper. It also adds a festive sheen over the top of our paper pieces. Once the Mod Podge had been painted all over the surface of the wrapping paper and scrapbook ornament pieces, I let it dry for 2 hours. If you look closely, you can see that the inspiration platter actually has a red rim around the platter. We're gonna get that same look and we're gonna be using a permanent red marker. To get that same look, I drew a line all the way around the perimeter of the platter. This is such a nice detail. It's like tracing around your artwork. It just makes it pop. Now that the red line has been drawn onto our platter, we are officially done with our Courtney Noel serving platter. Look at how fantastic this pretty little platter looks. I just think that the ornaments over the top of the black and white checked wrapping paper are so cute. They're bright, they're festive, and they add so much detail to our platter. It was a great idea to add the paint to the back of the platter and then the dishwasher safe Mod Podge to the rim, because now if I want to put some snacks or something on it, I don't need to worry about the paint being on the front because it's on the back. And because we use the dishwasher safe Mod Podge, I can just wipe off the platter once I'm done. Let's take a quick look back at our inspiration platter. If you remember, it was $79.95. After calculating all the costs that went into creating my Deck the Halls platter, the grand total was, and look at how similar our platters look. The only difference in my opinion is the size of the ornaments, but everything else is spot on. We were able to take a thrifted platter, add some wrapping paper and scrapbook pieces to it to create a one-of-a-kind Christmas platter that's going to be perfect for your holiday feast. You can make your own easily and affordably. Our next Mackenzie-Childs Christmas dupe is this holly jolly bobble decorative tree. Isn't this thing adorable? I love how bold and bright it is. It just says it's Christmas time. What I do not love about this holly jolly bobble decorative tree is the price. It's $199.95. That is definitely not a jolly price, but I know that we can recreate one that's so similar for much, much less. The first thing we need is a form for our Christmas tree. I found a styrofoam cone at Hobby Lobby. This is the perfect size and it's going to be a great skeleton for our tree. Next, I'm going to round up some ornaments that I have just around my house from Christmases gone by. Do you guys have that bin of just kind of random ornaments and Christmas decorations that you don't want to get rid of because you might use them one day and then Christmas comes and goes and you haven't used them? I have a couple of bins like this. Well, I'm gonna use these gold and green and red ornaments this year that have been hiding in my bins for plenty of years. They're gonna be perfect in this project. And the only other ornaments we're gonna need are the black and white checked ornament and the black and white striped ornament. All right, so this is the original plan. I was gonna take my wrapping paper and I was gonna wrap it around the ornament to create a black and white checked ornament. You guys, it crinkles so bad. It looked horrible. Looked like I took some wrapping paper and wadded it up into a ball. So that didn't work. And then I thought, well, maybe fabric might work. And I tried it with some fabric. And again, it creased and bunched and it just didn't look good. So I thought, all right, we're gonna pivot and we're gonna try something completely different. I have these wooden ornaments that are flat. I purchased these a couple years ago at Hobby Lobby. And these are gonna work great because it's going to look much more professional to put wrapping paper over a flat surface because we won't have any creasing or bunching. So what I'm gonna do is take my wood ornament, I'm going to place it over the black and white checked wrapping paper. I'm gonna get a pencil, trace around it, and then cut out the circle. I also have some black and white striped wrapping paper. This is once again from Hobby Lobby, and it was right next to the black and white checked wrapping paper in the party section. This is left over as well, so I'm going to use this wrapping paper. I'm going to place it down, then grab my wood ornament and put it over the top, trace around it, and then cut it out. Then I got some hot glue and added a whole bunch of hot glue to the surface of the ornament. Then I took my black and white checked wrapping paper circle and placed it into the hot glue. I pressed it firmly to the ornament. Then I repeated the process with my striped wrapping paper. I added hot glue to the surface of the wood ornament and then pressed the wrapping paper into the hot glue. These ornaments look much more professional because they're smooth, they're clean, and they're going to look fantastic on our tree. So now it's assembly time. I'm going to get out my hot glue gun and a whole bunch of hot glue sticks. We're gonna go through a lot adding these ornaments to the styrofoam cone. I'm going to start off with the largest black and white checked wood ornament. I added a whole bunch of hot glue to the back and then I pressed it to the styrofoam. Then I moved on to the other colors. Before I'm gluing them to the tree, I'm going to remove the ornament topper. It's just going to get in the way and we don't need it. So all of the toppers are coming off the ornaments. I'm adding large ornaments and small ornaments in green, red, and gold all around the perimeter of the styrofoam cone. Once I got high enough, I added the black and white striped ornament to the tree. Once again, I'm just using the hot glue to put on the back of the ornament and then press it to the styrofoam. I continue to add the rest of the ornaments to the tree. The hot glue works beautifully. You may have to hold the ornament in place for a little while to let the glue solidify, but once you have the ornaments on the tree, they support each other and they help the other ornaments to stay in place. There is a little gapping between some of the larger ornaments, and this is where those teeny tiny gold ornaments are going to come in. I'm going to add some hot glue to the small ornaments and then just press those into the areas that have gaps. Now that all the gaps have been filled with the gold ornaments, we are completely done with our holly jolly decorative tree. Look at this tree. Isn't it the cutest thing you've ever seen? I cannot get over how adorable it is. I love how bright and cheerful and festive this looks with the red, the green, and the gold ornaments in different sizes. And then we've got our flat ornaments. We've got the striped and the black and white check, which tie in so great and really pop against those bright colors. This is another great Christmas decoration to use if you have a smaller space, because a little tree like this wouldn't take up too much space on top of a countertop or a table. And you could completely customize this. I'm using these bright colors to mimic the Mackenzie-Childs tree, but you could use whichever color ornaments that you wanted to create your own ornament tree. All you need is a styrofoam cone and a whole bunch of ornaments. If you have any leftovers in your house, this is a great way to use them up. Pull them out of those bins and make some trees out of them. Let's take a quick look back at our Mackenzie-Childs Holly Jolly Bobble decorative tree. It was super cute, but that price of $199.95 was just too high. Well, after adding up all the costs that went into creating my Holly Jolly decorative tree, the grand total was That is such a great savings. And I calculated the cost of what ornaments would be, but my ornaments were at home and I didn't buy them right now. So I actually was able to create this for less than that, which is fantastic. And I just love the way they look. I'm going to place mine right up against the Mackenzie-Childs Christmas tree so you can see how similar they look. We did take a few liberties with the larger black and white striped and checked ornament, and that's okay. You can take a couple liberties when you're making pieces for yourself, and that's the beauty about getting a look for less. You can customize your look for less into whatever design you want. Well, I hope you got some inspiration or some ideas today. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for watching.